Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Sarah with Harrisburg Project, and today we are kicking off our claims sessions. Today we are going to do all claims. So first of all, it looks like my audio is working, but just can somebody tell me, can you hear me? I just need a yes in the questions pod. All right, I got a thumbs up. Awesome. Great. Cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, not only are we starting back our webinars after we have been kind of on a hiatus, but also the system that I use has upgraded dramatically again. So I'm a little rusty on the operation of things. So if you see me looking over a lot, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing any questions and that if anybody's saying anything, that I'm getting it, that you can hear me and all those good things. So if you have not attended a training with us before, you are more than welcome to ask questions during the session. If they are relevant, I will answer them at that point in time. If we're going to talk about it later on in the session, I might leave them. If I can't answer your question, I hope that doesn't happen. But if I cannot answer your question, I will let you know. I will talk to Isby after the session. If we have a lot of good questions, I'll do a Q&A. I'll post it in our news briefing later. Trying to think. If you want to, you can type your questions. If you do want to ask your questions, you can use your microphone if you have a good setup. And then someone was asking about your materials. So I did upload the handout and I uploaded the new instructions on how to get to the annual financial report for your district. So you should see 2 PDFs in your materials. So like I said, things are a little bit different on this system than they have been. And so I think maybe they look a little different than you as well. So you're looking for a piece of paper that has a little clip, paper clip. That's your materials link. So it used to be handouts. Now it's called materials. If you do have questions, again, you can use the question mark section and you can ask those questions during the session. If you have your handout from last year and you don't want to reprint out, really all that changed were the dates. So of course the due dates are different and things like that, but if you don't want to reprint everything out, you could probably use most of last year on the process. So the process hasn't changed if you did your claims in iStar Plus last year. So I know that some of you don't want to print all that out and I get it. All right. So this is a little clunky on how I have to keep up with these questions. I am not loving this, I will tell you, but I want to start fresh so I see new things come in. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So today what we're going to talk about is going to be how to enter data into iStar to get your reimbursement back from the students that are receiving special ed services. Okay, so if you are brand new, what we are doing is we're going to look at the students that are in the system. So you've been working on the approval side. That's where you tell the fund code, the disabilities, the related services. We have requirements for all of that data. But then for some of those students, certain fund codes, you can also come in, make a claim, tell how much you spent this year on that child, and then get some form of reimbursement. So for different funds, you will receive different percentages. So I'll try to let you know what those percentages are going to be, how that's calculated. So what we're doing today is going over for different fund codes, how do you get, first of all, the data? How do you find out what the cost was? What did you spend? And for different fund codes, it's going to be different. Sometimes you have to figure it out. Sometimes you get a bill. Okay, so we're going to go over that. And then I'm going to show you, if you do need to figure out what the cost was, how you can go about that using iStar. Using iStar to find out cost is not a requirement. Using iStar to report the cost is a requirement. So that's the only way you're going to get the reimbursement back, is if you put the cost on the claim record and then let ISB take that. So we're going to talk about, when are these different fund codes due? When are we going to see those dates? How do you identify youth and care students? This is really important because the youth and care students, also known as your orphans, are going to be the students that are 100% reimbursable that we're really going to be focusing on. Then we're going to go over the different methods that you can choose from to report the data. So the claim has 3 options. You can manually put in the data. You can manually put in the data, and instead of typing in your days, you can use a calendar. Or we'll go over the key components of how you calculate a claim, and you can use the program method. Program method is used when we don't know the cost and we need to figure out what the cost was. So if you have a student that has received services in your district all year long, they're in special ed, they're an orphan, and they go to different classes, okay? You have no idea what that costs the district, right? You have to figure that out in order to tell ISB, this is what it cost us to educate this child. This is the money that you would get back, okay? So for orphans, it's 100% that you get back. So those are the ones that we really want to focus on. Then we'll go over calculating the actual claim, and then we can look at your reimbursement reports that will be in iStar. Okay, so this is just roughly what we're going to do today. The program method takes the majority of our time. As far as your pickup dates go, your due dates this year, Fund Codes D, E, and F for regular term orphans is due June 15th. So a lot of you know, some of you don't, but when we have a due date like this, that means that after that date, you cannot add any more regular term Fund D, E, or F records. So we will lock the ads. You will not be able to make any more additions with those fund codes. All of you, or not all of you, but most of you will not have Fund D, but you may have Fund E or F. We have 3 locations in the state that have Fund D students. So those are 3 different cooperatives in the state that have those types of students. So if you ever think you have a D, you just need to call us. More than likely, it's still an E or an F, okay? So Fund E are your regular term public orphans. Fund F are your regular term therapeutic day orphanage students. So June 15th, they're due. We have a correction period where you can work on the claim through July 31st. So about 6 weeks you have to still continue to work on the claim to make corrections. So something that I see a lot during these correction periods is that people think you have to go in and put something in the claim record on June 15th, and then you can make a correction to it. That is not how it works. You can leave it at 0, and we prefer that you do. We want you to get errors, because what happens, and this happened to someone last year, is they didn't want to see the errors. So before corrections started, before June 15th, they went in and they put in an amount that was ridiculous, maybe like put in like $100 for their claim amount. They forgot to go back and change it. And that was what they got back, was $100. So I do not like to see placeholders or putting data in just so we don't send you errors. Errors are okay. If you don't have errors, we don't know that you need help. Okay, so it's okay to have errors. Do we want you to have 200 errors on the due date? No. Okay, but it's okay to get them. You don't have to, people freak out. You're not in trouble. All right, we just know where we stand and what we need to do to get you error free, but with quality data and quality claims. Okay, so don't put your placeholders in during corrections. Fund Code X is excess cost. It's due July 15th. Again, this year, we do not foresee any funding. I think this will be the 5th summer that we will not, as I said, we do not foresee having funding. Excess cost was used in the past if you had students that were Fund A students but were expensive to educate and you suspected that their costs would exceed 4 times your district's per cap. So if your district's per cap was $10,000, then you would say, okay, well, I think that this child's going to cost over $40,000 this year. So you could change them from an A to an X. You could see if they exceed that, then you would get a prorated amount back. We never knew what the amount would be. It was anywhere from 8 cents on the dollar to 36 cents on the dollar, I think, something along those lines. So we never knew what that was going to be, but in the last 5 years, it has not been funded. So a lot of people are abandoning excess cost. Almost everyone is, honestly. Some of this was replaced with Fund S. So some of these were co-op, separate schools, separate public schools. So whether your district has a separate public school that's a special ed school, or whether you're, a member of a co-op where you send kids to that co-op school, if it's a separate brick and mortar with 100% special ed students, then it qualified as Fund S. So some of that was absorbed. Some of those Fund X losses have been absorbed with Fund S. So I still talk about it because it's still in statute. So it still exists, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it this year. August 14th, Fund B. This is your private day. So Fund B is residential as well, but what we're talking about for August 14th this year is your private day, so your tuition is due. Also, Fund Code S is due that day. That's your separate public schools. So that's going to be, again, kids that maybe attend an approved public separate school, so a separate facility, that kind of thing. And then November 2nd is when our summer term claims are due for summer term orphanage. So you've got regular term orphanage due in June, summer terms due November 2nd this year. Okay, so these dates are a little bit funky for August and November. It's because the actual statute dates fall on weekends. So this one's on a Saturday, so the 15th falls on Saturday, so we always go the day before. This November 1st is on a Sunday, so we always go the day after. So that's why they're a little bit different this year than typical, but that's just kind of how we move them. We want them to be due on a business day, so we're here to help you. All right, so the most important students to identify, and we've just come out of a big due date for these kids on May 1st, is your orphans. The reason is because you want to make sure you have them coded properly so you can get your reimbursement, because they are 100% payout, always. There's not a proration. So if you say they cost $50,000 to educate, you're going to get $50,000 back. All right. So we concentrate on these the most. We always want to identify them first. I get a lot of questions about, they go to this school. Should they be an X or an E? Always an E. Orphanage always trumps any other code. So if they go to a therapeutic day, you don't want them to be a B. You want them to be an F. You're not going to get 100% back if they are a B. Okay? So no matter what code it is, if they qualify for orphanage and are a youth and care student that are qualifying, then you want to make sure that you code them as an E or an F. So again, the E's are your public school students. So they would be like an A that's an orphan, an X that's an orphan, an S that's an orphan, or a B. So those are your therapeutic day, your private day kids, and those would be possibly an F as in Frank if they are orphanage. So again, those alterations go from a lower percentage or no reimbursement to 100%. So E and F always trump any other code. Remember that. Okay. So under utilities, you're going to have your possible youth and care tab. We are looking in this grid. If you are a single district, you're going to select your district and hit search, the magnifying glass. If you're a co-op, you're going to have to go district by district. The last column is the iStar Fund Code column. You're going to be looking in that column to see, first and foremost, is there a fund code for the children listed? If there is a fund code, then you're going to look to see, is it an A, S, or an X? If it is one of those codes, then you need to go change the approval record fund code to an E. Then you'll look and see, do you have any B's as in boy? If you have any B's, then you're going to go to the approval record and change those B's to F as in Frank. Then you will look at the remaining students. Are any of the students without a fund code but should be an I-STAR? That means that they're not entered. Okay, that means they need an approval record. You've missed those kids. And then last, any remaining kids in the list should be regular ed students or students that we have told you do not qualify. So if you go in and make these changes to existing records and you get eligibility errors, you make a list of your SysIDs, send an email to support, and ask us to verify the eligibility. We will then look directly at the DCFS file and we will look to see, is there a name discrepancy? Has this child been adopted? Were they eligible for some months but not others? So it's a very detailed process for us to check. We know there are improvements coming down the pipe for this. So hopefully next school year it will be a little bit better. But the reality is it just takes work to figure this out. And we're always going to have human interaction. We're always going to have to do overrides. But at the end of the day, you're going to know if they're eligible or not. And that's how we're going to get you funded. Okay. Now, what we are seeing is that you are listening to me and you are sending us emails of your SysIDs. But sometimes you're sending us kids that are coded as an E or an F, and they don't have errors. So if they don't have errors, you're good to go. That means everything matched up, everything looked good. The name was spelled the same, the date of birth matched, the eligibility codes all lined up, okay? So if you are error-free on D, E, or F, you don't need to notify us. It's only when you get those eligibility errors. And so we will check and we will tell you they are eligible, but we need to get an override because, you know, the last name spelled wrong on one of the files. Or we will tell you, no, they don't qualify. So what's that mean? That means that we have a list of living arrangements we get. Some are valid, most are not. So if they are under one of those that is not a valid living arrangement, then we're going to not be able to approve them for orphanage. So we would tell you, change them back to A, X, S, or B. Okay. All right. If the student does not have an IEP, we do not create a program for that youth and care student. Correct. Yeah. So I-STAR only has special ed data, no regular ed data, no 504s. Okay. Only special ed students. So they have to have an ISP or they have to have an IEP or an ISP. So a service plan or an IEP. Okay. So this is what that column would look like. This is what you would be changing these A's to E's. All right. We're going to talk about the 3 methods of computing days, why and when you would choose these. First, we're going to start with manual. Manual means that you have a student that is a claimable code. All right. So we just talked about the claimable codes on that due dates page. If they don't fall into one of those codes, they don't have a claim. So you didn't see Fund A, right? Fund A doesn't have a claim. Now you'll see when we talk about program, they may come into the picture, okay? But they're not going to have a claim on their own, okay? So you're not going to be able to change a Fund A to manual method and type in a dollar amount. They can only be in a program with kids that we're costing out, okay? So for manual, this means that you're filing a claim for an entity that does not have a public calendar, so we won't be able to use the calendar method. And the cost is unknown. So you're going to have to figure that out and put that in, okay? So that means you're going to get an invoice, you're going to get your billings, you're going to gather all those together and you're going to figure out the cost and you're going to type that in manually. And you're also going to type in the days enrolled and the days in session. Okay? All right, if for yeah, back to youth and care. If they're just youth and care for a couple months, then you would have an INDAD. So they would be, you know, an E for part of the year and maybe an A for the rest of the year. So that's part of that file that we get monthly. The youth and care tab is updated nightly though. So the possibility of them being an orphan is going to update nightly. It's a different file. Our air checking that we look at living arrangements is a monthly file right now. We are highly anticipating next year we're going to the daily. We're very hopeful. All right. Calendar. Very similar to manual. Again, the cost is unknown by the system. The system does not know what the cost is. So this means you're bringing it to the table. You are bringing in your list of invoices, your monthly invoices for the year. You're going to, you know, put all those together, right? Or you're going to be filing a claim for a therapeutic day student, so a private facility student, right? Where you're going to be bringing in the tuition. So iStar doesn't know what the cost is. You have to tell it. Okay? So we're filing a claim for an entity on calendar that has a public calendar. So special ed cooperatives, public school districts, separate public day school, and private facilities. All of these can have a public calendar. Okay? You're going to have separate records for funds D, E, F, and S. So for manual, you will have all manual summer records for public facilities. Okay. So what I mean is you're not going to be able to have one record for these fund codes that says a term of both. You have to have a regular term record and a completely separate summer term record. So if you have a regular term record now and you know that they need a summer record and they are one of these codes, you can do an INDAD. And on the new record, you will make the begin date the first day of summer school with a term of S. Okay? So again, if you have an existing record on these and you need a summer record, do an INDAD on the regular term record. End the regular term record the last day of school, and then the summer term record begin date will be the first day of summer school with a term of S. Okay? If they do not attend summer school, you don't need the record. This is only if they attend. You do an INDAD. The only time you notify us about youth and care is if you've created the record, the approval record, as an E or an F, and you have eligibility errors. If you have eligibility errors and you don't know why, then you can email us and we can tell you if they qualify. If you have any of these fund codes right here, you should not be able to have a term of both. It should not even be allowing that. It should be regular term. So you should not have to change anything. Yes, you do the INDAD. It's the same. There's no difference in what you're asking is if they would have two records. They're still going to have two records. They need a regular term record and a summer term record. Okay. You don't want an end date on the summer term record if you want it to roll over. Okay, remember that. Open-ended records in iStar. If you end them, they won't roll. So if you have a regular term and a summer term, the summer term record rolls over, and in the new year, they'll change it to a regular term. Okay? So don't end your summer term record or they won't be in the new year. For speech only, we still file claims. We just do those a little bit differently. I'm going to add a speech only session. I thought of that. I actually thought of that last night because we had our coffee talk yesterday and I thought I should do a speech only session. We have IEP and ISP students who attend other Illinois public schools and we pay tuition for these students. What fund code should they be? It still would just be, I mean, if they go to other public schools, then they're probably just a Fund A. If they go to a separate school, they might be an S. But if they're an orphan, that always trumps those. So I can't say without knowing more about the kids. Okay, I have a couple students who will be Fund A for regular and Fund S for summer. Do I do an INDAD for that? Yeah, you'll have to have 2 records, or you're not going to be able to make the claim because you can't have a Fund S. I mean, you don't need a Fund S with the both, but you wouldn't be able to anyway. So you'll have to have an A record regular, S record summer. And I recommend, even though you have a long time to add these summer records, we always run into SIS enrollment problems in the summer. So remember, we still need SIS enrollments in the summer. So if you can go ahead and get them added, maybe, you know, everybody's different, but if your tech person that does SIS is going to be gone all summer, you may want to start taking care of that now if you can. Okay, so a fund code change is always going to result in more than one record. So if you have a student that's one fund code during the year and a different fund code in the summer, they would always be separate records. That wouldn't matter what codes they are. I mean, and that's just because you want to be doing INDADs and you want to be showing proper history. Okay, so that's just good record keeping to me. Okay, so again, manual and calendar are both, though, going to be where the cost is unknown and you're providing the data. The system is not figuring it out for you, okay? So remember, these, you have to have separate records. If you have time now, go ahead and start adding your summer records if you can. The biggest difference between manual and calendar method is the participation days section. For manual, you're going to be typing in the days enrolled and the days in session. You're providing that, okay? You're also providing the ADE cost, okay? You can do this for Fund X, Fund E, and Fund S. So what is the ADE cost? It's the cost for the whole year. So you would be typing in what it costs at the days in session, right? Fund X, E, Fund S, summer term. These are your possibilities if the cost is known. So you're getting an invoice from a district, you're getting an invoice from a special ed cooperative. That's manual method. Notice we don't have private facility here. So they all have to submit calendars, so we're always going to be using calendar method for those. Fund S, summer school, has to be manual. That's why we have a separate claim. We don't have summer calendars. I saw in our survey, someone said we need to require them. I would love to. They didn't ask me though. All right, so that's manual method. You're getting the cost from somewhere else for the year of service. You type it in, you type in your days enrolled, days in session. And once you do that, you save it, you've provided your claim. Okay? So this cost needs to be accurate and entered by July 31st for your orphans, because that's the end of corrections. Calendar method. We have 2 options for calendar method. So you can use standard calendar method for Fund B, S, E, F, and X. A lot more options here. So if they have a public calendar, then you can use the calendar method. Notice it's regular term for S and E. okay? Because we don't have summer calendars. So for S and E, regular term. For Fund B, for Fund F, it will default to calendar. You will not be able to change it. You are going to be given, for some of these, a rate, and your calculation will be your rate times the days enrolled. So you can see here the days filled in based on the calendar selected, but you still type in and provide the costs. This child was there every day, 170 out of 170 days. The cost for 170 days was $25,500. So you can see our ed cost is still $25,500. So if you are given an invoice or a cost at a lesser number of days, so if this child was there less than 170 days and the facility just sends you what it costs you, then we offer you the calendar cost method. So for calendar cost, we would be able to type in our cost per pupil instead of the ADE cost. So it would allow us to type in what we paid instead of the full year. It didn't look right, did it? What's that? Oh, I know. Sorry about that. This is a public child. So this is an example of like an E or an X. This screen is. I added a screen this year and it confused me. This next screen is for Fund B, F, or S. We're providing the cost per pupil, which is the days times the rate. Okay. So you might want to make a note on there. I probably need to make a note on here to myself, evidently. Oh, duh. Fund B, F, or S. So the screen looks a little bit different, but it's still calendar method. Okay. So these are going to be your public kids. And then these are going to be your private or your separate day kids, separate school kids. So your cost per pupil, again, it's your days, 99 times the rate that you pay, so the per diem rate. The claim doesn't show summer days because I just don't, it's just a regular term. So for this one, you're not going to be able to do summer. For this one, you're only going to be able to do summer if it's B or F, or I'm sorry, B. So that's why it doesn't show summer. So we talked about all the separate ones you have to do. You can't add transportation costs unless it is for orphans and they have related service of 25. So for therapeutic day, so for Fund B or Fund S, you cannot add transportation. You can for orphans. Thank you, Heather. Yes, I'm a goofball just like everybody else sometimes. So, okay, so your ADE, this is your average daily enrollment. And what we want to do is we want to watch this sometimes. So if your days enrolled are less than your days in session, this is when we're going to look at whether we want to use the calendar method versus the calendar cost method. So the calendar method for your public kids, you have to know the costs for the whole year. So if it's a public child and you don't know the cost for the whole year and they don't go the whole year, you can change it from calendar to calendar cost, where instead of having to type in the full year cost, it'll let you type in the education cost instead. So just that. So when does this come into play? Again, if your ADE is less than 1. So if your days enrolled are less than your days in session, and the district sends you an invoice and said it cost X amount of dollars for 167 days, then you can change it to calendar cost method and type in the cost at 167 days. Okay? If you type in calendar method and you type in the cost at 167 days, it's going to deflate your education cost. Okay? So again, if you have an exact amount of what it cost you for days less than the max, then you can use calendar costs and type in that exact amount. If it's every day, you can do either one if they go every day. But what we were finding is that people were using calendar costs. They were typing in what they were charged, and then the ed cost was going down. Okay. So the ADE cost is the full year cost. Okay. Okay. So any questions on manual or calendar? You guys have had good questions. They've been relevant to what we're talking about at that point in time. I love that. So I'll give you a minute. Need to catch your breath or get some coffee. And we're even doing great on time. I hate keeping you guys here for 2 hours. It's a lot. Okie doke. Yes, my slide just didn't show for a term of B fund code. Fund code B, term of B would have summer days included, and it fills in the days for you. So we just looked at a regular term for B. We're going to have a Fund B training this summer, several of them. So I'm going to make a note about that. Actually, I have a ink pen here. Maybe we need to add another screen. Okay. Got it. Only 2 funds can have transportation. That doesn't, okay, so I don't want to confuse anyone. If they have a related service of 25 on their IEP, then you absolutely mark it on their approval record. Okay, you always do that. Whether you can claim them for transportation is only going to be for your orphanage kids. Okay, so funds D, E, and F. No, I honest to goodness, I appreciate the suggestions. Okay. So yes, without a doubt, I'm going to add the slide in. I think people think that doesn't hurt my feelings. So I want constructive criticism, please. When you've been doing this as many years as we have, sometimes I think that, it becomes real mundane for me, and I don't want it to be that way for y'all. So, okay. So, key components of the claim. These are things that someone has to go through, no matter what. It may not be a formal, they may not formally do it on the forms. They may use Excel to do this, but at some point, to calculate the claim for orphanage students, someone has to go through this process. This does include excess cost. If you still are forced to do excess cost, I know some of you are, excess cost can be calculated the same way. But Whether you get an invoice from another public district or a separate school, at some point for orphanage, they're going through a process like this. Okay? So if you know the cost and you're able to type it into iStar using the manual or calendar method, you don't need to do this. This is going to be if you have no idea what it costs to educate a child that is coded as a Fund E. Okay? All right, I got a Fund X question. I'm going to nip that. All right, we currently have a Fund X student. If we keep her as X and we don't end up getting X dollars, do we still get the reimbursed at a B? No. If she's a B, she needs to be a B. An X never trumps a B. B trumps X. You're guaranteed. Well, first of all, X are for public kids. So if it's a therapeutic day school, a private facility, then that student always would be a B or an F first. X is public kids. Normally, X is an expensive A. Okay? So if they should be a B, then put them back to a B. Should we change our Fund X to A? I would. If you're not going to, I mean, the dollars aren't going to be there. You're not going to file a claim. I mean, I don't think anybody hardly is filing the claims. So really, I mean, it's just confusing if you're looking at your data. There's really no point for them to be an X. So just a little background on how I guess predict whether or not there will be funds. The funding comes from other areas if there is leftover. The other areas don't have any leftover and they aren't able to pay it 100% still, and the proration they're paying has gone down and down every year, and it went down again this year. So I don't suspect, obviously, that there will be any funds left over if they can't pay at 100% out of those other areas. So that is what we go by. There is probably not ever going to be excess cost funding again. I don't foresee that. I foresee excess costs just going away. And honestly, I just kind of wish it would, because it would make it so much easier for you guys and so much less confusing. But it exists now, so we talk about it a little bit. But okay, so these are the ISBE forms that you will use if you do not know the cost to educate your orphan. They are in your district and you need to figure it out. Okay, so we're going to have the tuition cost sheet, and we fill that out and figure out the costs based on a couple of other forms, a student form, a personnel form. The claims and tuition computation sheet is kind of like our receipt or our itemized statement of the cost of the program for the child. The depreciation schedule, I've never had anybody have to use, but it is there if you do have equipment that you buy for the program. So the program method of computing days is filing a claim. First of all, they'll have a public calendar. These are only public programs for orphanage, okay? So when we're using program, it's going to be mostly for your Fund E. Again, with all this, just take it with a grain of salt that it can be an X as well, but I'm always going to be referring to E. The cost is unknown. The system right now does not know the cost, okay? So remember that in all of these areas, our system does not know what the cost is. You have to tell it. So with this, we're going to figure it out. All right. All right. So what does the program do for you? It will generate the forms that we just looked at. So it's going to help you generate those forms. You provide a little bit of information and it's going to spit out these reports. The student claims calculations are done in iStar automatically. So when you're looking at the claim record, the things that we do, the process that we go through will start to fill in those costs for you. We're not going to be doing like the manual method where we go over and type in the days and we type in the education cost. Okay, it's going to do that for you. And then your reports, including your cost sheets, are always going to be on file. So you'll be able to go into your programs, you'll be able to change the school year, look back, that will all lock at the end of the year, and you'll be able to see what you did. So if you have an audit 3 years down the road and they say they need to see your cost sheet for, your 2024 XYZ program, you're going to be able to say, okay, go back, pull the cost sheet for that child, hand it to the auditor. Okay, so it acts as a great archive. Now, again, the program method is a tool. That doesn't mean you have to use the program in iStar. But again, whether it's you or someone handing you an invoice, someone is going through this same process to determine the cost. Okay? All right, let me catch up on questions here. All right, the per capita of the district. So the per capita tuition charge is the dollar amount that ISB determines through a complicated formula that says it costs X amount of dollars per year to educate a child in your district. So a regular ed child costs $10,000 a year to educate. That number changes from year to year. Speaking of those numbers, we do not have those numbers yet this year. It is early May. I haven't heard a word about them lately, so it could be a while. The latest we ever had was one year was mid-June. So the lines 4, 6, 27 you're asking me about, I haven't heard. Now, your child count you can get out of iStar if you want to go ahead, like if you're really in a crunch to run some numbers, but really it's early to do that. So that's your per cap. Now, with that, sometimes if I am helping with claims, we will look and evaluate a list of students. So we'll come in, we'll look at your Fund E students, and I will look to see, is it worth going through the program? Okay, so what do we mean by that? Well, you don't know the cost and you still want to make a claim, but we'll look to see, was this child speech only? If they're speech only, we have separate calculations we show you how to do, and you can enter those in calendar or manual method. So if you look at kids and they are speech only, then we have separate forms on our website that you would use to calculate the claim, and you would do manual or calendar. Okay, we don't build speech only programs. They will never be correct. Speech teachers see so many students that it would never be correct. Okay, second, sometimes I'll look and I'll say, well, gosh, this child was only there for about 3 days. We don't need to do a program for that. It's not going to be worth your while. And I say, we're going to claim per cap. So we'll be able to just go in and claim the per cap amount for 3 days. Okay, so if your per cap is, we have a mechanism where we can just type in the per cap number. So you could do calendar method, type in $10,000, and the system would calculate what 3 days would value, and that would be your claim. So there are exceptions to the rule. What if a child is only 5% special ed? It's up to you. I would probably claim per cap. But pre-K kids, you can't do that. So if they're pre-K, you cannot claim per cap ever. The per cap does not apply to pre-K. It means nothing. If you get an audit, you're going to have nothing to back that up with. The per cap is calculated on K through 12, okay? So no pre-K per cap. If they're 5% special ed and you want to do per cap, I would be fine with you doing that if we were working together, okay? So with that, I mentioned working with me. If you do not feel comfortable doing claims after today and you need help, then you go to our website. I'll show you how to sign up for an individual training with me. So we do individual Zooms. They're one-to-one. We'll evaluate your kids. We might meet 3 or 4 times for 30 minutes at a time until we get your claims done. So if you want to do that, again, it's on our website. I'll try to show you at the end. It says want customized training under hot topics. You fill that out and I'll get back to you with some dates and times. If you want to do that, I would do that like now because I tell everybody they have to come to this training first before they can schedule with me. So probably going to be pretty booked up for a while. All right, so program method of computing days, how do we start? Well, we first need to start by forming our program. How do we do that? What is a program? Sometimes I call it a cost center because that's really what it's about. You guys probably have programs in your district, okay? You're going to be like, okay, well, we have the resource program, but it's probably a lot bigger than what we need to refer to as a program or a cost center. So what you do is you take your list of kids that are orphans. Those are the kids that we're focusing on, okay? And the definition is basically a combination of special ed instructional services, support service supplies, materials, physical plan adjustments, and other special ed facilities designated by an LEA as meeting the common educational needs of a group of students with disabilities. So the key is common educational needs. Okay, so when we're looking at this, what we are doing is we're taking a list of our kids, we're making a list of our orphans, and that is what's going to drive what we do next. Okay, all right, is a foster child considered an E? Not always. They can be, though. It depends on their living arrangement. If it's a valid living arrangement, then they may qualify. All right, if you have students that get adopted, they may change from an F to a B, as in boy. We just wouldn't know when without looking at the file. So yes, that can happen. You can have a B and an F in 1 year. You can have kids that qualify for part of the year and not part of the year. We see that sometimes whenever somebody gets an error 1 month and they change the record for the whole year. That happens several times. We just loaded our March file a couple weeks ago. The kid just got adopted in March. Well, you can still get 100% from August to February. So yeah, you would have like the E or the F till February, and then you'll change it to something else for the remainder of the year, but we can still make the claim. And you want to. It's 100%. Why not? It's worth your time for that many months, okay? And then, like I said, if all else, at least file per cap. Okay, so we're starting again with our list of kids, but where do we go from there? So when we're looking at a program, again, we do not want typically to see a total school or a complete district-wide program. Unless you're a teeny tiny district, you're probably going to be violating some of the definition in doing that. So normally your programs are going to be smaller groups that are more focused around the actual orphanage child. So if you have an orphan and you make a total school program and it's every grade level with 15 different special ed teachers, that's incorrect. Okay, we need to focus more on the child, what their educational needs are, who are their teachers only. Then we look, do any of these kids share anything? So maybe if we have 2 orphans in first grade and they have the same instructional teachers, we can put them in a program together, right? But we don't want the whole school. Unless you're teeny tiny and you only have, a handful of special ed teachers. So I'm not going to say always. There's always an exception to the rule with special ed. Blended classrooms cannot be claimed as programs. So what do I mean by blended? If it is one teacher that's qualified in both regular and special ed, but there's one teacher in the room, then that is blended. If you have a blended classroom, you cannot do a program for that child, okay? If it's co-taught, where you have one teacher for each in the room, then it's acceptable. The reason is because we don't have general ed kids in our in our system, we would never be able to properly allocate the salary of that teacher without having those general ed kids. Okay? What if your district is no longer using programs? I mean, I don't know how they're getting around it. If you have pre-K kids that are orphans, they can't use the per cap. You don't have to use program if they're K through 12, but you're probably losing money. The Youth and Care tab is your one-stop shop for orphans. Excuse me. And it updates nightly. The tab does. Updates nightly. Okay? Our air checking file is once a month, but the tab is pretty fresh. All right. Early childhood pre-K students, you should not be combining them with K through 12 kids. Almost everywhere, those are separate programs, separate types of funding, okay? So we should not have those kids together. If you have blended classrooms, you can claim their related services if they have any. So we can do a manual claim for those kids if they're blended, but they have related services. And then again, no speech-only programs. Okay, if they're blended, you will not be able to create a program for them. And so yes, you create programs based on your list of orphans. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your list of orphans. Okay, so that's going to be your first column. You're going to have those kids. Then you're going to say, all right, next, who are their teachers providing instruction? Let me see. I think I have a graphic that I want to share here. I updated it. And I'm going to share this at Directors Conference too. So, but let's look at this graphic to get started on our program. I can't present this exactly how I want to, but this is how to create a program. All right. So we're going to do this on a really small level. And that's what this is. This is a very small level, but it's the same idea. We have Johnny. He's the orphanage student. So we have him in our list. And then we look to see who are Johnny's teachers that are providing instruction to him. So we're going to have Mr. Jones is one of his teachers that's providing instruction to him. Then you're going to have Mrs. Smith as one of the teachers providing instruction. Okay. And then we're going to also have Mr. Ben. He's a program aide. He's an instruction aide. Okay. Mr. Ben is, again, instruction or a program aide, not an individual aide. Okay. We'll talk about individual costs here in a few slides. But so Mr. Ben, he's just going to be a instruction aide that is in the program. Maybe he's with Mrs. Smith. Okay. So then what you look at is who are the students on Mr. Jones and Mrs. Smith's class list, not their caseload. They may not be one and the same. Okay. Who are the students that are in their classes? The students, all the students that they teach. Who are those students? Okay. So then you're going to say, these are other special ed students that are in Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones classes. If these are middle school and high school programs, you can see where they could get pretty large. We expect that, okay? When they're switching classes, again, it can get large. So that's when you're looking at your orphanage list and you're saying, okay, well, I started with Johnny and we went with this. But then I'm going to get down to Susie, and you know what? She has Mrs. Smith too. So Johnny and Susie are going to get to be in the same program. So that means less programs for you, which is good. All right, if you are not using the 5066A and they are K through 12 kids, if you are just reporting per cap, nothing's going to happen in an audit. But if you are just putting in random numbers, I mean, that's just going to be problematic. I mean, I don't know how they've been doing it since, I know you've had to come back into this, so I don't know how they've been doing it while you were gone, honestly. But per cap's okay. It's just that you're probably losing money, or you're missing an opportunity, I guess is what I should say. Okay. So in addition to your collection, you're going through your list, you have your kids, you're going to pull your teachers in, you're going to determine at that point how many programs you have. You may have 8 orphans and they may not have a single thing in common. You may have to have 8 programs, okay? Once we do one program, some things copy into the other ones. So you don't necessarily have to do every single thing 8 times, but you might have 8 entries, 8 programs. So what we will do is create your programs. After that, this doesn't have to necessarily be in any particular order. This is just the way that it flows to me best. In addition to knowing who those instruction teachers are, though, you're going to have to know their salary, and you're going to have to know on that salary what is their breakdown in pay. Is it local funds or is it something else? Something else paid by a state fund, a federal grant, something else. So you're going to need to know those things coming into this. For me, those are the things that if I'm helping you, I don't know, and I'm not going to be able to figure out for you, okay? I don't see your class lists, and I don't know what your teacher's salaries are, okay? So coming in, if you had that data, we're home free. I can help you with everything else, unless we may have some questions here or there, all right? That's what you need. Then we can go through and start this list. We can get started without some of that, but we're not going to get very far. All right. So we're going to create programs. We're going to wait on per caps. We can do a lot of things without per caps, but we can't finalize without them. We're going to verify that your salary data is entered as we're adding staff into the program. We're going to verify your student claims data is entered. So you will put on the individual claim record any individual or transportation costs. So we were looking at that claim record earlier. That's where your individual costs go, or your transportation costs, and I'll show you how to do that. You're going to add the student records to the program. So those class lists, we're going to add the orphans, and we're going to add in the kids that those teachers see. So Mr. Jones, Mrs. Smith, all those kids underneath, we're going to add them into the program. So they're going to be a bunch of Fund A kids in there too. Okay, so that's where your Fund A kids come in, and having a program set. Not all Fund A kids are going to be in a program, okay? So not all of them, it's just going to be the ones that we need, okay? We're going to recalculate days on that student program, and then we're going to fill out our cost sheet, our 5066A. We'll recalculate our program, and then we'll be able to look at our reports. Again, right now, at this point in time, none of you can finish because we don't know the per caps. You might be able to plug a number in. Sometimes people add 10% to last year's per cap. Regardless, we won't be final until we see those. All right, program definition. It's under utilities. And when I say create a program, that's where you need to go. So you're going to go under your utilities and you're going to click on add. Okay, I'm going to try to do this live. You won't be able to see me, but I'm here. So you guys go ahead and follow along in your notes. And we're going to do this. Well, maybe not like that. We are going to do this on my training server and try to do it live. I think that's more helpful to you guys than the slides. If I can't get it to work, we'll go back to the trusty old slides, but you can look at those while we do this. All right. Takes a minute for this to wake up. we get in, it won't take this long, promise. This first part I'm doing is just an admin thing, so you don't need to worry about it. I just narrowing down to a fake set of Harrisburg data so it doesn't take as long. So that's what we're going to work with. So we're going to utilities, program definition. And I got a good question here. So we got our program search, school years 25-26. I'm just going to hit my magnifying glass. When you hit this and it shows you results, if you have programs that transferred over from last year, if they're still relevant, you can reuse them. If not, you can trash them. Okay? So this is the program that I built for this session. And you can do a partial too. So if you want to reuse some of them and trash some of them, you can do that too. If you want to trash everything and start from scratch, you can do that also. It's up to you. And it just depends on what your process is and how your programs are set up. So I'm going to click on this plus sign and we're just going to start a new program. So first you're going to name your program. Preparing district. It would be your district. If you're a co-op and you're preparing claims, of course, you're going to have more than one district in the drop-down. We want to use Harrisburg's calendar. Excuse me. We're going to hit reload calendar. Remember, we talked about this yesterday on our coffee talk to make sure that your district superintendent is updating their district calendar and marking it final. If we don't have a final calendar that has the appropriate days, then it's not going to be correct here or anywhere else in iStar. Per cap to use. Preparing district is used if you're creating an invoice only. Other can be used at a time like right now where we don't know what the per cap is. So we can add 10% and that can be a temporary placeholder. But under all other circumstances and when per caps are available, it's going to be resident district. Okay, so what are you working on right now? Is it personnel? No, I'm adding the program. I'm creating the program. So this is the program for the claim. I don't think anything's going to happen here. So our per cap didn't come in because it's not available yet, but when they are, that's how you would get it to come in. And then the person preparing the program, this is going to be the person that would get called with any questions. So mostly maybe me or Isby if we're working in the summer and have questions about your claim. So we're going to save that. So now we have defined our first program. And I'm going to click on this live test. And then you just click in this background or you can hit this X. I just usually click back here in this background. And here's our program that we've created. So we have looked at our student, Johnny. We found, we also looked at who the teachers were, right? So Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones, I think, and we have an aide, okay? So we've said, all right, this child is going to be in this program. And we named it Live Test HBUG. Sometimes people name it by the teacher. Sometimes they name it the child's name. I don't really like naming them after the child. I don't love that idea, but because it's going to print everywhere. But, you know, you're going to figure out a naming scheme that works for you. Sometimes it's a subject or an area, you know, but this is essentially how you start the process. You define the program. So what I was saying, we had, you know, one student, Johnny, we might have 8 students. You might have to do this 8 times, right? So this is just the very beginning, just defining the program and creating it. So this is for, right now we're pretending this is for our one student. Next, we're going to scroll down. And at this point, we're going to add in any students to the program. So we're going to go down to the S5066B section. You're going to click on this little Rolodex looking book and hit add new students. And this is where you're able to search by the students. Okay. So you can search if you need to search by district. If you're a co-op, you can do that. If you use caseloads, you can select by the caseload. So you can see I have some pretend things here. And you can hit search. I don't know if I have any kids in here, so let's see if I have any kids in any of this. All right. So not many kids I have attached to this, but what you want to do is you want to get the group of kids that you need. Worst case, you're going to have to search for all the kids on Miss Smith and Mr. Jones's class list by SysID separately or by last name. Okay, so I'm going to do the whole district so I have more options. So here you can see it lists all the kids that are in the Harrisburg School District with a record right now. Okay. So what you do is you're going to look at your class lists, the kids that are in Miss Smith and Mr. Jones classes. You're going to hit Control on your keyboard and you're going to highlight the students that you need to add. I need to get a Fund E here. Okay, so I'm just going to add these kids. If you have a class and you need the whole class, you can do Control, or I'm sorry, you can do Shift on the first kid. So again, I'm just doing this very randomly, but you're going to have a list of actual students that should be added. Once you get all of those, you're going to hit this check mark and hit Select Students. Okay, so you can see now it added all the students that I had highlighted to the S5066B. I wanted to make sure I got an orphan for demonstrative purposes. Now, after you do that, you want to click on this Edit Claim button and make sure that this child does not have any individual costs. Okay? If they have any equipment costs, so something that was purchased just for this child, you can put it here. If they have an individual aide, that salary goes here. If they have an individual nurse, you can put it there. If they have OT or PT contracted, any cost that's a contract, you can put that there. So don't forget any individual costs that the orphan might have, you can plug in here. But this is why you don't want to put the individual aide on the program. Okay, Mr. Ben was a classroom aide, not a one-to-one aide. All right, so your one-to-ones need to come here. We want to apply all of their salary to Johnny or to the orphan. Okay, so everything needs to be applied here to that orphan only. So make sure that you do that. Also, they may have special transportation on that record, so you would want to make sure you get individual costs entered. Is this the only time you have to do that? No, but it seems like a good point in time to go look at it, okay? When you do that, it will show up over here. So next, I'm going to hit Recalc Days just for good measure. We want to make sure that everything is up to snuff on this record. So the days enrolled and the days in session are fresh. Okay. So that's how we get our students added. Okay, so those were the class lists of Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones in our example that we were looking at. Okay, so we're pretending that it was Julia, Connor, Bailey, Taylor. All right. Next, we add the teachers. So I don't think I have a Mrs. Smith or a Mr. Jones or a Mr. Ben in here. We're going to just pretend. So we're going in and we're going to do, again, under P5066B, we're going to click on this, add new personnel. I'm going to search by Harrisburg's district. So click the magnifying glass. And I'm going to get, I can tell by the special ed ID of C that this is a aid. So we're going to grab that one. And we're going to grab 2 teachers, okay? So A's are teachers. They have an LBS. So I am going to grab those 2 teachers to represent Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones, and we're going to grab an aide to represent Mr. Ben. And we're going to add selected personnel. Okay. I think I've already used these, guys, so I messed it up just a little bit, but you can already see I've got salary in. Normally these would be zeros, and what you would want to do is click on the pencil for edit personnel. The only time you can ever enter salary data is from this screen on the program definition. This salary information is not relevant to anything else but this program, and you do not enter salary information for any other staff unless they are attached to a program. So in our example here, we're representing Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones, Mr. Ben. That's the only time you will have salary information entered. We do not do this for personnel approvals. So for that collection, this is not relevant, and you will not enter that for all your other personnel. We only need this for our program, okay? So I'm entering in local salary, other salary, federal salary. So if they get any salary that is not paid from local funds, then it needs to go in one of these other 2 boxes, okay? And then for evidence-based funding, for a para, you're going to put in $3,500. For a teacher or a related service provider, you're going to type in $9,000. If you suspect that you should not have to set aside that much, you can let us know and we'll help you figure out if it can be less. Okay, so that's your EBF offset. You guys get a set amount of money in personnel reimbursement every year. So let's say for Harrisburg, it's $100,000. It's been $100,000 since the 16-17 school year, I believe. That's what they get every year, no matter what, in special ed reimbursement. It was based on the calculation we had previous when there was a claim. And based on that calculation, you got back $3,500 for paras and $9,000 for teachers and related service providers. Now, if your staff has increased since the 16-17 school year, there's a good chance that if we still were under the old formula, you would get more than that $100,000. So really, you shouldn't have to back out so much reimbursement. So if you suspect that your staff has increased since back then and you want us to help you calculate to see if we can back out a lesser amount, you can reach out to us and we'll help you do that. The requirement for that is that you have your personnel done for the school year. So we cannot do it until your personnel is completed for the school year. A lot of you are not at that point right now. Okay. All right. If a program aide is paid 100% from federal funds, you will not enter that person in. It has to be local funds. It can't be any federal funds for their payment. $3,500 for paras and $9,000 for teachers and related service providers. Yes. Mostly you're concerned about teachers and paras. I rarely want to see related service providers added to a program like what we just did. We're going to catch all of their costs over using our AFR, which is going to be our next step. All right. If you see programs you don't need and you don't want them in this school year, you can delete them. It will not change previous years. Previous years are locked and archived. So if you don't want to use those programs again this year, get rid of them. Sometimes I will go to help somebody and they have rolled programs over for so many years that it's just terrible to navigate through that search. So it will make your life a lot easier just to clean them up. Okay, so we're going to want you to do a check errors, and this takes a minute, which I don't love, but we talked about it last year, and I don't think there's a way around it. So, all right, so now you would do that for every person, put in their salary and their EBF. And then our next step is to move to the 5066A. So you're going to click add. And when you do this, you're going to click reload, these reload buttons, refresh, reload for lines 1 through 6. I don't know if 3 and 4 are going to load. Okay, 4 didn't load. And I don't think 6 is going to load because, you know, these are the fields that we don't have the spreadsheet yet. This loads because it's in this system. It was collected in this system. So we're going to put, what do they probably have? We're just going to guess. So you can put something in here as a placeholder. You don't have to. And then we're going to hit load here to get our line 7 pulled over. So that brought over our total salaries for our 2 teachers and our para. Okay. So at this point, now we're going to go to our AFR. So what's the AFR? The AFR is your annual financial report. Every school district in the state submits an AFR. They moved this a little bit on me. So we updated the instructions. I attached that PDF because you're going to need that link to the FTP server. Let's see. So it's also under student claims. We'll probably be moving that up to Hot Topics though. So this is how you get to the server. And at this point, as the instructions say, you just type in the username, FINREAD. We want AFR. We go to 2025 because it's customary to use the previous year's annual financial report. We want school districts. And then in this filter, I'm going to type in Harrisburg just so I don't have to scroll down. I'm going to click on this and it's going to open up the Excel document. And Kendra is on. She said she's going to move that spreadsheet or those instructions up to Hot Topics now on our website. All right, you'll have to click Enable Editing. And then down here at the bottom, we're looking at why this is cramped up here. We want this Expenditures 16-24 tab at the bottom. And we're going to start on line 38. So I need to make this just a little bit. Okay. It's really small. I don't like that. Well, I guess that's as good as I can get here. Okay. So on line 38, we're then going to look at the expenditures starting here under attendance and social work. So when you look at your cost sheet, you can see that attendance and social work are separate. So what we have to do when we run across one that's combined into a 2110 function, not a 12 or a 13, we scroll down to the bottom. We're going to click on line 24, enter other function. We're going to type in the 2110. It has to be regular education, and then we're going to type in the amount. So for the amount, we have to look at the objects that we can use. So that's going to be looking at the columns. So the objects up here that we can use always are 100, 200, 400, and 600. So the numbers that are in those columns under those objects can always be added together for the function. Sometimes, and that's what our manual will tell us, we can use 300. 2110 is not a time that we can use 300 according to our manual. I think it's at the bottom of page 17 of the manual that tells you when you can and cannot use these. Okay? So what we would have to do is take this 236,531, this total in yellow, and because we cannot include purchase services here, we will subtract that 190,481. Okay? I don't know what that number is, so I'm just going to guess. I'm going to put in 46,000. Okay, so I'm just guessing because I don't know what that is. I don't have my calculator. After you enter that amount, you're going to hit add other right here. This is what everyone misses, this bar across the bottom. Okay, so now we have 2110 under regular ed. Now we scroll back up. Of course, 8 and 9 we're going to skip. We just did those. Then we're going to go to guidance services. So we're going to look and see on guidance services what objects are filled in. 100 and 200 only. Okay, cool. We can take this 328, 436 total and just carry it right over into regular ed. I think that's what the number was. 328, 436. Yep. Next, we're going to look at health services. In the manual, it tells you you can include purchase services for this. So we're not going to back out 2418. And we're just going to type in 190, 596. Okay. So how do I know when I can put it in special ed and when I can put it in regular ed? Our instructions tell us for lines 9, 12, psych, 13, speech, and 18, special area admin, you can put the numbers from the AFR under special ed. Anything else has to go under regular ed, unless you are a co-op costing out your own program. If you're a co-op, then of course, all of your costs are special ed costs. So if you're costing out your own co-op program, then you're going to be under that. Okay? All right. Just making sure I'm not missing anything on my notes here. So I think I have these costs. I sure do. Oh, no, that's from last year. Okay. So I'm going to go back and do a couple more of these So we don't have psych services. We don't have speech services on here. So we're going to run down to 2210, improvement of instruction. Again, you can use purchase services here. So it's 33,905. Okay, so you will continue on down using objects 100, 200, 400, 600 totals until you just get to the bottom where it's 2,600. So you just keep doing that same process. Okay, so you look at the AFR, you look to see which objects you can include. So if you're not sure, let me go back to our website. If you aren't sure about what you can include, you will look in the claims manual. So it's the Students with Disabilities Claim and Reimbursement Instructions. Doesn't this look nice with their new cover page? I like it. I think page 17. No. Top of page. It's, I don't know, it says 16 here, 18 on the thumbnail. So it's 18 on the thumbnail with the cover sheet. So it tells you right here when you can use purchase services. And then down here at the bottom, this is where it tells you the functions that can be under special ed column. So social work, psych, speech, and special area admin. So again, I have two questions about this right now. This is your answer. Okay. Where did I find the claims manual? We host it on our website. You can find it on ISB's website too. We when we have new manuals, we put articles in our news briefing. So this is on our website, hbug.k12.il.us under manuals and guides. It is the Students with Disabilities Claims and Reimbursement. So if you don't know, if you're brand new, you may not know. There are manuals for that have all the rules for the things that are in iStar. There's an approvals for student and personnel, and then there's a claims manual. So all the instructions are here. I just try to teach you how to use those instructions in the system. So after we jump down to our next line, we have we have line 26 is all 2540 expenditures. This says all. That means that in that tab for expenditures 16 through 24, we can come through here. I'm going to just hit Control F on my keyboard. That means find, and I'm going to type in 2540. So what you'll do is you will look through here, and the instructions tell you can use capital outlay for 2540. So and purchase services. So for operation and maintenance here, you're going to use all 5 of these. So you will take down a piece of scratch paper and write down your yellow number over here, the 1204272. Write that down and then hit find next. And look here, 1, 2, this is 300, 400, 500, 600. We can use all of those for operation and maintenance. So scratch this number down underneath the one you already had. We're going to add all these together in a minute. You're going to do find next again. Well, we can use that. Benefits, 126,340. Write that down. You should have 3 numbers written down now. 1, 2, 3. This is your object 400. So that's 17,530 that we can use now. So hit find next. And this is another 2556. Write that down and hit find next. We should be back where we started. Okay, so 5 different areas for operation and maintenance. You write all those numbers down, add them up, and the total is what you're going to put in line 26. So the total of all those numbers that you scratched down. Why do we get to use all of them? Because it says all here. You will see other functions with these same numbers, but we can only use the ones under support services, okay? We can't use them in the whole AFR, in that whole expenditures page. So it says all in the instructions, so we can use all there. So that's good. Utilize that. Line 27 will be a reload. I'm just going to, I think Harrisburg's 137. I'm just going to type it in. Number of district classrooms used in this program. We have 2 teachers in the program. The instructions specifically state that you can have the number of teachers in the classroom as the number of classrooms. So we're going to type in 2. And then down at the bottom, you can put in anything else that you can think of. If you purchased equipment that was $5,000 or more, then you can put it here, but you have to depreciate it over 5 years on the depreciation schedule. If it was anything purchased for this program under $5,000, you can manually add it to the instruction cost on line 7. I have never had an example of that, so that's why I don't really spend a lot of time talking about the equipment, but that is there. Moving on down, again, if there's anything else you can think of, or if you want to look in your instructions and use some of the options for the others that you can enter, then let me see where I can find that. Line 24, it tells you not only can you enter 2110 in, but there are others that you can search for. Then you can also add those under other. So the more cost you can find, the better it's going to be, because it's going to truly reflect the cost of the program. All right. So here you're going to hit your reset. It's going to pull in your evidence-based funding, all your offsets that we put in for personnel. You're going to save it at the bottom, and then we're going to click close. And then what this is telling you is the total cost at the bottom of that page, $39,977, is what it costs to educate one student in this program that's 100% special ed, that's 1.0 ADE, meaning they were there every day of the year full time. That's the max it could cost, okay? Now, what the system will do on a recalc is the system is going in now and it's looking out at any of the orphans attached, and it's going to say, okay, for the orphan, who was our orphan? Johnny. Johnny was our orphan. It's going to say, okay, it's going to look at Johnny's record. It's going to say Johnny was 75% special ed, so it's going to take 75% off. Then it's going to say Johnny was only there half the year, so it's only going to do half the year cost. Johnny wasn't full-time. All these different kinds of things it's going to go through and look at, and it's going to calculate what Johnny's cost is, and it's going to fill it in on Johnny's claim record. So let's see if that already worked. So I'm going to go back down here. It's actually Romeo. We're pretending he's Johnny. So let's look at his record and see if it updated yet. Oh, I bet it won't, because that per cap, darn. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work yet, but it should go on and fill in the data. But remember, I'm on this wacky training server. So, but essentially at this point you should be done. And what you should be able to do now is go print reports on this program. So you would go under this S5066B and hit this cloud, and you can print this the student report, the student worksheet. Let's see if it'll work. I'll help you guys find your AFRs in just a second. The number of classrooms, the total number is the number in your district. Then the number you type in is the number of teachers that you assigned to the program. So I typed in 2 because I have Hattie Phillips as a teacher, and Mallory Russell as a teacher. You can't do 3. You can't do it for a para. So this Taryn is our para. So you can't do it for that one. You can only do it for teachers. So I typed in 2 were used in this program. That's in the instructions. And I'll help you find your AFRs in just a second. Sylvia, what's your district? Are you West Chicago? I can't remember. Type in your district for me. Bloom, yes. Okay. Let me see. Romeo was our kid. Okay, it's probably not gonna let me do that like that. Darn. I would really want to find our student here so you can see what happens after the fact. So just give me, ugh, it's gonna take forever. Man, see if I can get it. Let's try this. Oh, yes. All right. I thought his name was Romeo. I guess not. It must not be working right over here. I think I have way too many for it to be even this program. So, darn. Well, I really hoped I could find one that had data in it. But regardless, it tells you on this sheet what happens once we find out the maximum the cost could be. So like what it would say is we would start here with our big 39,000, and then it would look at percent special ed, multiply by that, look at the days enrolled, and then multiply by that. And so it would create kind of like a little invoice for the student on the student level. And it creates one for every kid in the program. But of course, what we would be looking at is our orphanage student. And you don't have to print these if it's for your own use, because again, this will be archived here, but this is where you'd be able to go down the road and give something to an auditor. If I have a student from another district who I will be billing for tuition, I do a program same as if he was an orphan, correct? Yes. Excellent question. You would. If you need any help with it, they'll let us know. It's a little tricky because, you know, you have to add kind of a ghost student. So, I just had an idea, so I'm writing it down. Okay. All right. So, essentially, you're done with your program. You should, at this point, once you click on this recalculate button, your claim record will be filled out for your orphan or orphans that is attached to the program. Okay. And then you can go look at your reports up here, and you will be able to go to student and then change it to reimbursement for your category, and you can run the report that you want to. Okay. All right. This is for Fund Code E. So first and foremost, the Fund Code F, you do not make a program for. For Fund Code F, it's the days times the rate. All right, we have a Fund S question. Is there a list of approved separate facilities for 25-26? There is. It's on our website under Hot Topics. Right here, 25-26 approved Fund S programs. And it is different from last year's. Okay, and AFR. So how do you access the AFR? Let me see here. All right. So Kendra just put that up there for us under Hot Topics. So accessing your AFR. If you guys have questions, go ahead and start typing them in. We're at the end of our material, believe it or not, finally, and we made it under 2 hours. So that's good. So you're going to click on this link right here. It's probably not going to take me through all these steps because I've already done this. Oh, it is. So you click on the link, you type in the password, and the instructions tell you this. No, I'm sorry, you type in the username, no password, and click sign in. You go to AFR. You scroll down to the bottom, and you're going to go to 2025. School districts. And then let's see if we can't find yours for Bloom. I don't know why they don't have it. Let me check another way. You might need to go to your business office and ask them why they don't have their 2025 yet, and ask them when they anticipate getting it. Bloom Township. Worst case, you'll use 2024 is what we would do, Sylvia. So, okay. Yep, it's not there. So you'll want to ask your business office what's going on. That's not unheard of. This happens sometimes where we don't have one. Okay, so that should show you how to get to your AFR. I'll take any other questions you guys have. While I'm waiting on questions on our website, on the home page, if you want customized training, register now. This is where you're going to come in, fill this out, click on claims. I'll get back to you, ask you a date and time that we can get started, okay? You don't have to have anything for the first meeting. All of our training is free of charge. If you don't have the option to enable editing, you just need to make sure you're able to edit. All of our services are free. Remember, we're contracted with ISB, so. All right, where can we run? Where can we run a claims error report? We're going to go under reports. You're going to go to student. Now you're going to have a bunch of these, so don't panic. You're going to go to errors if you have a bunch of claims. Yeah, if you have a speech program in your list of programs, you probably want to get rid of it because they may have used it in the past, but we won't be moving on with it. What am I doing? Oh, student error report. This school year, and report type, student claims. And, oh, I think that's where you do it. I don't need to let that populate. I think my claims my reports have been showing real kids. So that's how you do it. I had to get off there real quick. If you're getting rid of speech program, then how would we track students for speech only? I don't know how you're claiming them and tracking them. Do you have to have that do you need to know those kids for some other reason for speech only? I mean, mean, if you can guarantee that every single student that the speech teacher sees, let me come around here, I'm sorry. If you can guarantee that every single student that the speech teacher sees, you are able to attach to that program, then go for it. But it takes forever to do that. And I think your costs would be better to use per cap. So, I mean, you do not have to delete your speech program. You do not have to not use it. But if we come in and look at a speech program and it's got 3 kids attached to it, we're going to, that's not going to work. And you got to make sure that they're, that all the kids are in iStar that they're seeing. So they just see a lot of kids. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to do to get their ADE correct. And just dividing their salary in half, that doesn't cut it either. What is the purpose of using a speech only program? I don't recommend them. So that's why she's going to call in. We're going to talk about hers, but I don't recommend speech only programs. In fact, I mean, the people that trained me at ISB just flat said no. And it's just because you will never be able to add all those students in and get a proper line 1. Okay? And so what I mean by that is when we're adding all those students on the, let's see where we're at here. When we add all those students to the program, we're doing that to properly reflect the salaries of those teachers that we are attaching. So we're making sure that everyone that's involved in that with those teachers is accounted for here. So we can take this special ed ADE for them and say, this child, Adrian, only gets 0.03% of these salaries. So see what I mean? It's very, very specific. We are being very, very careful that we are only applying a certain percentage, but we're able to say all of these kids added together, their total ADE is going to represent this value, this whole value. Okay. So what I said earlier was, well, if, say Hattie sees, say this is blended and Hattie's got regular ed kids in here too. Oh, well, we'll just cut her salary in half here. No, that's not how it works. The only way that would work is if every single one of these kids were 100% special ed and every single kid we can't account for, so the regular ed kids were 100% too. There is no guarantee, and it is not correct to just say, just cut it in half. Okay. And it could go either way. Maybe we should have more applied to the special ed to this program and less to the other side, or vice versa. So that is the reason when I am saying, if you're going to put a speech teacher up here, you're going to have every single kid attached with their special ed ADE represented. So that is what's proper. All right, where to sign up for an individual training with me? Again, on our homepage, under Hot Topics, want customized training, and then put your name in. Please put your address, fill the whole thing out so I can send you materials, because I'm just going to have to ask you for it later. So go ahead and fill it all in. Do claims. Tell me if you want any flip books or packets down here, and I'm going to send that stuff to you. Email's better, honestly. I'm going to get back to you faster email. Because I can just reply to those real fast and set up my calendar. So that's where you can sign up for me. So again, a little bit more about those. You don't have to have anything ready for the first meeting. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll look at your orphans, if you have any. Sometimes I get on there and nobody needs me at all. So I'll look at your orphans and we'll make a plan, and I'll tell you what you need to go do and what you need to come back prepared with. Okay. And so we'll look to see, do we want to do you know, a speech only calculation? Should we do per cap for this one? Should we build programs for this one? If you need help, it doesn't just have to be your orphans. If you need help on your Fund B, F, or S, then by all means. The flip books are the same as last year. Yeah. Nothing, fortunately, nothing new. The process is not new. And honestly, so a lot of you used Classic, so you were in the previous version of iStar, and in this version, for one, I love the program part of it. I really like it. And I'll be honest with you about the flip books is that I forgot mine, so I use that green page whenever I still can't remember all of those expenditures that you don't have, that you can use purchase services on. I still can't remember them in my head. So I use that green page all the time, and I forgot to bring it down here today. So I was shooting from the hip. So the flip books are just an old school cardboard flip book that has some shortcut information on it that's helpful, that comes from the manual. And so it prevents me from having to look in the manual, honestly. Some things I think I'll never forget, and some things I just can't remember from year to year. It doesn't matter. And let's face it, I'm not getting younger, so I'm probably going to need more flip books in my life all around. So, okay, I will hang on for a few more minutes. We're about to approach that 2-hour mark. I hate keeping you guys this long, but it's how long it takes to do all claims. All the other sessions will be a little bit shorter, except orphanage, or I'm sorry, Fund E. Fund E might be just as long as this one. So we have to talk about all the same things because it's every method for E. So BF and S will be shorter. I have some new trainings I'm going to add. We added some new trainings yesterday. So if you think you knew them all, go look under trainings, catch the news briefing on Monday, go in and look at that because we're going to add some new things. We've got some suggestions from the survey. We've had some suggestions on the to-dos. I don't mind to add trainings. I just always want to know what to add. So if you have recommendations, please let me know. I don't see any more questions coming in, but I will wait another minute or so just to make sure. Thank you guys for your good questions today. It always makes the session so much better to have good questions, and they were relevant and in order. So good job. Kudos to y'all today as well. So things will go super fast from now on, guys. We've kind of had some downtime. I'll be honest, after the collection of the child count certification and all of that, and now it will be that hit the ground running. So it is May. I do like some downtime, but I'm ready to get going. So thank you guys so much. All right, I'll give it another minute. Thank you guys so much. Okay, we're at 11 o'clock. I'm going to let you guys get. I will see y'all at the next session next Tuesday, end of year. Okay, so see you then. Thank you guys. Have a good day. Bye.